Hey guys, so I wanted to make a video about what orientation is like for jets. For any future jets watching or anyone who's interested in applying, might be good to know like what the process is like getting from point A to point B, and uh, and yeah, so it's actually not just one orientation. So that's something that I had no clue about beforehand, but I ended up having to do three different orientations. So I'm making this video a little late because originally I was going to make it just about um, DC and Tokyo orientation, but then I also ended up having to go to another orientation in Kagoshima City. So I decided to wait and make the video after. First of all, every consulate has a different orientation to begin with. So if you're leaving from the DC consulate like me, then I can tell you pretty much exactly what it's going to be like. But if you're leaving from a different consulate, because there's like consulates all over. I know there's like, I've met people from the Chicago one and the California consulate and some other ones. So this might not apply directly to you, but then again, I don't even know if there are any people interested in jet watching this video. So if you're like me and from the East Coast, one of the easier places to leave from is the DC consulate. There's also a New York one, so that probably works too. And what DC orientation was really simple. It was like one day you go, you pretty much just talk about what the expectations are of DC jets, and then you get some speeches from previous DC jets who have a lot of experience in the field. And the two talkers we had were actually really, really helpful to hear from, and it gave me so much confidence about doing the jet program. Both of them are extremely successful in their lives. One of them's a foreign service worker, and the other is high profile corporate world, but both of them started on jet and found their passion for language learning and other things during their time on jet. So that was really helpful. A lot of the other stuff is pretty much everything that you get in the jet handbook when you get into jet. So there's a very large handbook online that they used to print out, but they don't print out anymore because we're saving paper. So you'll probably get it as soon as you get into jet or within the first month of acceptance, and it is very long. I assume that most people don't read the whole thing, but my mom and I went through the whole thing and read it before orientation, and then orientation pretty much just told us all of the important things from the book. So I would say that, it's not totally necessary to read ahead of time, but it is a good idea. If you're having any doubts whatsoever, it's good to know exactly what you're getting involved in. So that's basically what DC orientation was like. It was only a couple hours, and then I was given the option to stay overnight. Not everyone is. If you're like from DC or Baltimore, they might not give you the option to stay in a hotel. But because I'm from Pennsylvania, they gave me the option to stay overnight, which was very nice. It was a nice hotel, and I met my friend Daniel there. We had a room together, and we ended up becoming friends. So that was really cool. And so after DC orientation, which ends at like 5-ish, you get a couple hours to do what you want. Honestly, you get the rest of the night. And a lot of people go home because they have the option. I didn't have the option to go home, so I had some of my friends from where I went to college meet me, and we went out for a couple hours and said my goodbyes. And then we had the next day. We all met at the airport. It's really easy. Like, there's not much that you have to think about yourself. So really just bring yourself and bring all your stuff, and they'll take care of most of the rest of it for you. I think that's, it's very organized. It's not like some other programs where they say, hey, here's your flight time, meet us in Japan. uh, it was succinct, organized, quite easy. They got us our group passes together and then led us through the airport. For me, there were two different JET alumni who were working, volunteering for the weekend to show us straight to our gates. So I travel all the time, but there are people who do JET who've never traveled before. So for them, it was probably really reassuring. And I enjoyed having their insight as well, because we ended up facing a 4-hour delay or something. And so we kind of sat around in the airport at a restaurant, and the AJET member who was with us, which is the JET Alumni Association, was very helpful and told us all about how the first couple weeks would probably play out, because it's different for everybody. So yeah, then we got on the plane, 13-hour flight. It can get pretty uncomfortable. I would say if you've never been on a flight that long before, it's actually not too bad when you fly with JET, because they pay for like United, and usually United going to Japan partners with ANA or All Nippon Airlines, and it's pretty comfortable. I had a lot more leg room than when I flew like Air Canada or something, and yeah, it was not bad at all. And I enjoyed my flight. I sat next to a JET person. For the most part, they put jets next to other jets on the plane, and actually got lucky and had a seat in between the two of us that was empty. So he was playing on his Switch 2 the whole time, and I was watching movies, and we had plenty of room in between us to like put our stuff down. Obviously, that's not going to happen to everyone, but it was nice that I got that option. So, yep, then we got to Japan, and this is kind of where the chaos starts, is like as soon as you touch down in Japan, a lot of stuff happens really quickly. And that's where, it could be important to know exactly what's going to happen so that you don't miss anything. When you land, you have to go through customs. Now, customs in Japan can be made very easy by doing this online registration process beforehand. I think the website is called Japan Web, and it's pretty easy. You go on there, you put in all your information. If you're a JET, they'll actually give you a PowerPoint on how to do that at the orientation before you leave. And so you have a QR code that you just show at customs, and if you've done everything right, they'll scan the QR code and they'll see that you are on a resident visa for working in Japan, and that's where they will print out your residence card. So if you're standing there and you don't know what's happening, it can kind of feel weird because everyone else is going through the line very quickly and you are stopped for 5-10 minutes. It's because it takes a minute or two to print out that card, and then they have to verify the information. But once it's done, you are now officially a resident of Japan, which is really nice. In Japan, they call that card a Zairyu card, Zairyu. It's good to know because in the first couple weeks, you get asked to show that Zairyu card a whole bunch, and if you don't know what that means, it can be really confusing. You might be like rifling through your wallet, but you definitely want to keep that on you at all times. So you get your Zairyu card, then you go to baggage claim. So after you get your bags, you have to go through customs, which is before it was immigration, now is customs. You go through customs and they basically just scan your QR code again and see your passport, and then you're fine. If you did the process to bring like prescription medicine into the country, then I think that's where you show them that you have medicine to declare, and you show them that like paperwork that you did ahead of time. I didn't have to do that, so I don't know like what that process is like, but they will explain that to you at orientation before you leave. So then you get past that, and for us it was like really quickly from that moment we walked out. There were a bunch of people holding big signs that said JET. They brought us to the bus area of the airport, and you give them your 2 large bags that you want to ship. Now, I kind of made the mistake of trying to keep one of my large bags with me and sending only one of my large bags and my carry-on bag. Now, I strongly recommend, if they give you a very specific baggage allowance like they did us, that you get a carry-on bag that does not have wheels, because then you can take it on the bus when you get to Japan instead of having to ship your carry-on. That would have made my life way easier, but then you just have to make sure you have like your suit and stuff in your carry-on bag. So anyways, they ship your 2 bags, and then you get on a bus and go to Keio Plaza, which is where orientation is held every year. Most of us pretty much went right to bed. I did have some time to, walk around Shinjuku just a little bit, but I was so exhausted it wasn't even worth staying out more than 20 minutes. So then the next day, Tokyo orientation starts. Now that's the big one. It is pretty long, and you have to wear business formal attire for the first session, because the opening ceremony is a speech from a very high-ranking member of the Japanese government. So everybody has to be in business attire. After that opening speech, there's a couple more keynote speeches, like from some really successful former Jets, or people who are on Jet right now and have a lot to say about what it's like. So it's really a nice way to get introduced to the country and to find out a lot about what Jet's going to be like. Oh, I should have mentioned, beforehand there's breakfast. And the breakfast at Tokyo orientation, at least for me every day, was a Western style breakfast. So if you're like really worried about getting to Japan and immediately eating like miso soup for breakfast, you don't have to worry about that, at least in Tokyo orientation. I will say miso soup for breakfast is awesome, but if you're like not there yet, that's okay. They will have eggs and bacon and sausage and all that. So anyways, back to orientation. The rest of the day looks like mostly fun type stuff, where they go through, what are the big things about Jet? What is teaching Japanese students like? What is the difference between prefectural and municipal? To give you the quick rundown on that, when you get assigned to Jet, at least as an ALT, you are either prefectural or municipal. And prefectural means that you were hired by a specific school. Technically, you are a employee of the prefecture, but at a specific school. So usually you're like a high school teacher and only have 1 or 2 schools. Municipal is different because you're hired by a specific town's board of education. So I'm a municipal Jet. I was hired by the Kikaijima Board of Education, and I serve as many schools as they want me to, which in my case is 5 because I'm the only Jet on the island. You don't really get a say in whether you're going to be municipal or prefectural, and it's not something to worry about because it mostly looks exactly the same. There's a couple differences in the resources you're given, but it really doesn't make a big difference, so don't worry about that. Okay, so I actually just found the schedule from Tokyo orientation, so I probably won't put it on screen just in case it's like jet copyrighted material or something. But so the day went breakfast, opening ceremony. You get a break after every like 45-minute session. So if you're worried about like not being able to move around, you'll have plenty of time to move around. Then there was that keynote speech from one of the previous jets. She's working at the Osaka World Expo right now as an interpreter, which is really cool, and that's the type of opportunity that jet can open up for you. But then we had jet program essential information and disaster preparedness. So that was a big one, just talking about what the essentials of jet are. Like I said, about the difference between prefectural, municipal, what responsibilities look like, and the big one was disaster preparedness, because as most people know, Japan is very prone to natural disasters. I actually just experienced my first typhoon last week in Kagoshima City. That was pretty interesting, and I'll tell you about it sometime. But other than that, there are earthquakes in Japan and volcano eruptions and tsunamis and typhoons. So all of the above are something you should be prepared for. What it pretty much comes down to is knowing your local disaster evacuation areas and having extra food and water stored in a go bag, which almost everyone in Japan has. So that's the type of thing you need to be mentally prepared for. But the thing is, most people I've met have said they've never needed to evacuate or use their go bags or anything, but it does happen every once in a while, so it's good to know about. Then we had a session on Japanese law. So that was pretty important, because obviously the laws are different here from, wherever your home country is that you're coming from, and it's a good thing to pay attention to. And then we had a lunch session. The lunches were actually delicious. I don't remember exactly what we had, but I just remember enjoying it a lot. And you get to sit with either new people that you haven't spoken to yet and make new friends, or you can sit with people from your consulate and catch up on how their orientation is going. So, whatever works for you. Then after lunch, we had a session from MEXT, which is the Foreign Language Education Committee, basically. They kind of handle what the curriculum for ALTs is supposed to be like, and they give some lessons during orientation on how to best prepare for teaching and what type of teaching to use in different grade levels. And if you've done TEFL or TESOL, it's basically the same type of thing, but it's a good refresher since you're now in Japan. So yeah, we had the Foreign Language Education in Japan session, the Active Instruction in Schools session, and Basics of Team Teaching. And then there was a Japanese study session that was pretty simple. It was literally the very, very basics of Japanese that you need to know for meeting people for the first time. So we basically went over how to introduce yourself. And all right, so after the Japanese language session, which is obviously not very comprehensive, it's only an hour, and assuming that a lot of people have not studied any Japanese, which there are quite a few people who hadn't learned any beforehand, it's pretty basic. So if you know your hiragana, katakana, and N5 vocabulary, you probably don't need to pay any attention during that session. But so after that session, the final session of the day, which this is around 5:30ish, was a mental health session. Now, it mostly is about how mental health support works in Japan. It wasn't really about how to keep up your own mental health, but more to about how to find resources to support your mental health in Japan. JET offers a wide variety of resources, anywhere from speaking to your prefectural advisors to finding personal therapists within Japan that speak English. So there's a lot of options, and all those resources are given to you in like a packet so that you can access them in any event that you might need them later on. It was kind of a tough session to end day one of orientation on, so I think everyone was just really exhausted after that, and that's a long day of orientation. So once that session was over, they had a dinner, but a lot of people just went right to bed. I went to the dinner for a little bit, but it was more of a social than like a real dinner, and I don't think I got to eat anything because I was getting talked to the whole time by people from all over. A lot of people are really curious about what they think island jet life would be like. I didn't really have answers because I didn't know anything about it yet. So one of the reasons I wanted to make more videos so that I can show what it's like at some point. But yeah, that was day one of orientation. Some people went out to like Shinjuku afterwards. I think I went out to like an izakaya for a little bit with some friends that I had made. But after like that long of a day and 13 hours jet lag, just total exhaustion, most people just went to bed, and I went to bed not very late. I think I was asleep by like 10. So that was day one of orientation. Day two was a shorter, less stressful, just like overall not quite as tough. Day two starts earlier than day one, but you get off earlier too. The last thing of day two is at like 3:45. There was another PowerPoint presentation on useful information for ALTs. Day two is pretty much fully split up between ALTs, CARs, and SEAs. CARs are a higher level jet position where instead of teaching English, you're an interpreter for a prefecture or for a town hall somewhere. And then there's also the SEAs, which are sports coordinators. I don't really have any information on what their orientation is like because the only session that was really joint for that was the opening ceremony. So after that, I didn't see the CIRs really at all after that. But yeah, so the useful information session was in the morning, and then we had 3 MEXT workshops in a row, again, about how to teach. This one was a little more hands-on, so we were doing demonstrations in small groups, and we were split up mostly based on municipal high school and not high school type stuff. So I think everyone in my classroom was gonna have elementary schoolers and or middle school. So that's what that was like. Pretty self-explanatory stuff, especially if you've done TEFL already or if you have teaching experience. It's not really that different. It's more just how can you apply your past experience to teaching a language that these students probably don't understand what you're saying at all. So then there was a break and a panel discussion after that. The panel discussion was probably the most useful part because we were given open floor to ask previous or actually current jets questions about their experience. Nobody on my panel was an island jet, so there wasn't that much I could ask about the experience, but that's where you get, more straightforward, useful hands-on information about, driving in Japan and how to handle, political discussions if they ever come up. Thankfully, I have not had a single political conversation come up since I've been in Japan, which is a nice thing, but, it can happen. So after the panel discussion, we had are host prefecture meetings, so, or city or whatever, depending on how big of the place you're in. My meeting was all of the incoming Kagoshima prefecture jets. That included CIRs and SEAs, and I didn't really get to meet any of them during that meeting because it's a very short amount of time where they have to give you a lot of information about what is going to happen the next few weeks. So that's where I found out that Kagoshima was going to have its own orientation, 2 weeks later. So we talked about what Kagoshima orientation was going to be like. That was where I was going to find out a lot more about living on the island. Of course, by the time Kagoshima orientation started, I had lived on the island for 2 weeks, so I found out most of it firsthand, but it's still a good resource to have. And it's also where we talked about how we're going to get to our placement. So this is something that everyone was stressed about, was not knowing about how you're going to get to your placement. And all I can say is there's a really good chance that they've set everything up for you and that you just don't find out until like right beforehand how it's going to work. So for me, I had no clue how I was getting to Kikaijima until pretty much the day before we left. And that's where they handed us all of our information. So I got my boarding pass and a pamphlet about how my schedule was going to work out. So it turned out I had a flight direct to Amami Island, which is next to Kikaijima, where my supervisor would be meeting me off of the plane and taking me to the ferry to get to Kikaijima. Now, I don't know how different it is between prefectures. I did have some friends who, even on that day, weren't totally sure how they were getting there and kind of just got brought with a supervisor. And some people don't have to fly; they just get on a train or a bus and go to their placement. So very different between prefectures and cities. But yeah, honestly, they took all of the thinking out of it for me. So I was really pleased with how that worked out, and I made it here safely, as you can see. So that was really nice. So after that, we had another dinner session, and that pretty much ends Tokyo orientation. So once orientation was over, we were given the rest of the night to do what we wanted in Tokyo. I went out to dinner with some friends. Other people, went out to bars or went clubbing. Some people just went to sleep. It's free time to do what you want with. Tokyo orientation is also a really good time to get some of your phone plan stuff sorted. So I was facing a really annoying issue where I was not able to get an eSIM because I bought a new phone on a Verizon business plan, and so I was locked for 60 days onto my current eSIM, and I couldn't buy a Japanese eSIM. That can happen to anybody. Probably won't. I was the only person that I met who was having that exact issue, but other people were having other eSIM issues because they don't know what carrier is going to work in their area. For the islands, Docomo is the best carrier according to locals that I've talked to, but the group that carries Docomo in this area wouldn't allow me to get an eSIM until, or at least apply for it until I already had a residence card. So I couldn't apply until I was already in Japan, and then I found out it wouldn't work because of my eSIM being locked anyways. Tokyo orientation is a great place to ask people questions about how to get that sorted. And they usually have a bunch of phone carrier companies come and set up booths to give information about it. So if you're like me and you're in a sticky situation when you get to JET, just go ask somebody. There's lots of people to help with that. And I can talk more about phone stuff in my next video, which I think I'm gonna do like a tips and tricks video at some point. So yep, that was Tokyo orientation day 2. The next day was just departing for prefecture. So there is breakfast that day, which is really nice. I got up really early, like 6:30, went down, had breakfast, and then I went and waited with my prefecture until it was time to take the bus to the airport. Travel, like I said, pretty much taken care of for us. I didn't really have to do anything on my own. Although one thing to note is the domestic weight for bags, and this is where that earlier decision to keep a big bag with me came back to hurt me. The domestic bag limit is less than the international bag limit. So my international bag limit coming in was 50 pounds, or I think that's like 22 kilograms, something like that. And then it's a little less, it's 20 kilograms for domestic, but it's not a person doing it, so you really can't get away with even being like 0.1 or 0.2 over. It's a machine that weighs it, and it won't take your bag unless it's under 20. So I ended up having to take some of my stuff out, stuff as much in my backpack as I could, and I also gave a pair of shoes to one of the Amami CIRs, which thank you, Ian, for taking my shoes with you, because otherwise I would not have been able to get on the plane. But that was sorted. Just advice, take a smaller bag to orientation than I did. It just makes your life easier. So yeah, then we got on the plane. It was like a 2-hour plane ride, really not bad at all. And it was nice that mine was a little later than other people's, so I got to, see some of my friends to their gate and wave them off as they left. And yeah, I got to go straight to Amami, where my supervisor picked me up and took me to Kikajima. Fast forward 2 weeks, spent, significant time with my new coworkers and getting settled, doing a lot of that beginning island stuff, which I can talk about at a later time. Then we were taken to Kagoshima orientation, which is also only 2 days, but I decided to stay a full week. Kagoshima orientation was really fun because it was only a few hours each day, and then you have plenty of extra time to hang out with your new prefectural friends. I assume this is really similar for every prefecture, but if it's not, this might just apply for people going to Kagoshima, although I know other prefectures have orientation, some earlier, some later. That's where you get to learn about rules specific to your prefecture, and maybe some scenarios that are specific to your living space and style. This was really nice. We had a whole hour session to just talk about difficulties of living on the island, because there are plenty of them. I'm super grateful I was placed here, and it's very fun, but there's also a lot of things to consider, like the humidity is crazy bad and there are bugs everywhere. My apartment has cockroaches. This won't happen to you if you're in most other places in Japan, but if you are all the way south, it is very humid and the cockroaches get pretty big. So just, keep in mind that there are situational grievances that they will address at your prefectural orientation, which is really nice. I had sort of figured out that I had cockroaches earlier, so I put out some poison for them. But yeah, other stuff at Kagoshima orientation was like mental health in the local area, how to address it, especially for islanders. If you're on an island and having mental health issues, where can you look for support? I'm sure that was helpful for some people. And there was talk about how to get between the islands easily. We went through a really quick, hour-long session on travel, finances, and I forget what the third thing was, but the travel and finances parts were really helpful because we learned about, the best apps, the best companies to use. We talked about taking JAL or ANA flights versus taking budget flights. And the budget flights are definitely cheaper, but at least with JAL, you get a significant decrease in price when you are an islander. So at least for me, I get an island living card that takes a huge chunk of the price off flights, which is really nice. Not everybody gets that, obviously, if you're not on an island, but yeah, so that was the travel section. Finances, we talked about how to set up a bank account or get a debit card. Everyone at Kagoshima orientation was in different steps in that process. For me, I was pretty behind in the process because I still didn't have a Japanese phone number, and having a phone number can be really important depending on where you live to set things up. So I had to wait until I had a phone number to set up my cash card account with Japan Post Bank. Now, other people who live on the mainland don't need to use Japan Post Bank, so some of them use like Kagoshima Bank if they live in Kagoshima City. And for that, I don't know if you need a phone number or not, but maybe it's an easier process because they can just go in person and fill out the paperwork, whereas I had to do everything on an app. So yeah, we went over different things like that, and all of it was really helpful in the end. And it was a really good time, honestly. They set up like a great session for us in a really nice building. If you ever get to go to the Kagoshima prefectural office, the top has a beautiful view of the city and Sakurajima, which is a nice little volcano across the water. So yeah, beautiful building. Now, Kagoshima, I think, is unique in that after, like, directly from orientation, there is this event called KAPIC, or KAPIC. I don't know what it stands for, but it's set up by K-Jet, which is Kagoshima's alumni of Jet Association, and they take all of the jets who want to do it to a like kind of rural area outside of the city, and it's like a camping bonding experience where you learn Japanese for a few hours a day, and you do cultural things like I know they did flower arranging and learning how to do some traditional dances and stuff. It sounds like it's a really fun time. If you get the chance and you're part of Kagoshima, then I would highly suggest doing it. I didn't do it because of a miscommunication about the finances. So I thought that I was paying out of pocket when, in fact, all of the jets who pay to do it get reimbursed afterwards in full. So I heard that they had a really fun time there, and I'm very glad for them. I had a great time chilling in the city as well, and I met a bunch of people in the city. But you know, if you get a chance to do that, it's really good for your language skills and your cultural knowledge, and also just really good bonding time with the other jets. So I think that's specific to Kagoshima Prefecture, but other prefectures might have something similar, but I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that. Yeah, that pretty much brings me to the end of what orientation is like. You know, the first couple weeks being in Japan, you get a lot of stuff thrown at you. You know, it's not an easy process to become a resident here. There's a lot that you have to do after you get into the country, like setting up a bank account so that you can pay for your water and your gas bills, and setting up, you know, your driving things. Like for me, I wasn't allowed to drive to work until this week. Some people don't have that problem. If you're in a city, you probably don't have to drive to work at all, or even own a car. But my kind of only option to get to my different schools is driving, and I had to wait a while because there are some really specific driver's insurance laws and what type of license you need to have. Like I have a international driver's permit, but some Board of Educations require people that are driving to the schools to have a Japanese driver's license, Now, I'm an employee of JET and not the Board of Education, so once they reconciled that, they realized I could drive to work, but things like that take some time. And so my biggest piece of advice, if you are an incoming JET, is that the first few weeks are gonna feel crazy, and there's a lot that's gonna happen, and just try not to get frustrated with it all, because it'll be over, and then you'll be teaching and you'll be having a great time. I'm having so much fun now that most of that administrative stuff is over, and I get to kind of do what I want at work, in terms of making lessons and making Canva PowerPoints and stuff. So, oh yeah, the other really cool thing is Jets get to use Canva Premium for free. This is not a plug, but I love Canva, and the premium version is so helpful, and I get to use it for free now. So that's a really nice thing if you are a JET or incoming JET. I think that's everything I have to say about orientation. If you are a incoming JET, or interested in JET and have more questions about it, leave it in the comment section, or if you know me personally, text me, I guess. But yeah, that's kind of all I have to say. So, all right, see you later.